So Joseph says, what did Joseph say? I am Joseph, your brother. Is my father well? Boy, that reading kind of comes out of the blue on a Sunday morning in February, doesn't it? Maybe a little background would be helpful. So Jacob has 12 sons by 2 wives. He has 10 sons by his first wife, and then 2 by his second wife. The last 2 sons are his favorite sons, and they're spoiled, because even though their mother is the second wife, she's really his first love. Okay? One thing you can say about the Old Testament, it's not boring. So Joseph is one of those spoiled sons, and he knows it. And the 10 older brothers are starting to feel like maybe he's wearing that a bit too brightly. So they decide that they're going to kill him and throw him in a pit. But then they relent and they instead only sell him into slavery and say that he died. So there's some mercy for you. Joseph, meanwhile, goes through all kinds of adventures, is abused and mistreated, but God plays in his favor, and he ends up rising from being a slave to being Pharaoh's right-hand man down in Egypt land. And God sends a dream to Joseph and says there's going to be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. So Joseph uses his authority to organize everything. So for 7 years, they gather up all the extra, and then for the next 7 years, everyone will be fed. And so that's where we enter the story now, a couple years into the famine. Meanwhile, up in Israel, are you following this still? Up in Israel, Jacob and the 11 other brothers are starting to get hungry. So Jacob says to them, go on down to Egypt and basically beg. So they've arrived now with their hats in their hands to ask for food. And that's when they meet Joseph. But they don't know it's Joseph. See, Joseph has gone all Egyptian on them. He's got a shaved head, no beard, 2 right feet, right? So they don't recognize him. So he plays with them for a couple of days, and then he finally reveals that he is their brother and asks about his father. What he does is he humbles them. And that's really what this story is about, is humility. Joseph puts his older brothers in their place. What is their place? And what's your place? You see, what happens in the story is a reversal of a hierarchy. First, the 10 older brothers are proud, and they humble Joseph. Then it gets turned around, and Joseph is the proud one who can humble his brothers. And from his position of power, he has the luxury of choosing to be merciful. But is that really what humility is all about? Jesus raises a much higher bar, true to form. He says, love your enemies. Do good to those who persecute you. Right? Jesus is not saying someday the hierarchy is going to turn on you and you're going to end up at the bottom, so be prepared to submit. He's saying go out there and turn it upside down. Put yourself at the bottom and strive to stay there. To hate is to devalue. It's to say you're not worth much. To love is to value very highly. To say you are precious to me. Who says to their tormentor, you are precious to me? That's a tall order. It's a high teaching. Now there are some tricks, of course, you're familiar with. Someone gives you a hard time. You can say to yourself, they must be having a really bad day. Or maybe bad childhood, real rough time. I know how that feels. The Buddhists can take it a step further. They say, in my past life, I must have been like that. So now I know what it's like to be on the receiving end. Tricks like that work to an extent. It's really very pragmatic teaching that Jesus offers. Don't hate, and you won't be hated. Don't judge, and you won't be judged. Very pragmatic. And it can be really disarming to greet vitriol with gentleness. Sometimes the situation can be diffused very quickly that way. Sometimes we can say to ourselves, what's really more important here? My pride, or maybe some peace and harmony? Here's a funny thought for you. Everything that you know about anything is from your perspective. It comes to and through you. Everything you know about the entire universe is what you have read or been told or seen or experienced yourself. So in a very real way, you are the center of the universe. But hopefully one of the things that you picked up along the way is that you are also the tiniest speck in what might as well be an infinitely expanding vastness. And you are not at all the center of the universe. And everything that you know and experience, when you're gone, will go with you. But the world will remain. And it will go on without you. Just saying. Most pragmatic of all is this teaching, do unto others as you would have them do to you. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Very pragmatic. Now let's be honest. What we all really want is to be loved. We want to get love and at least some respect. And Jesus is saying, if that's what you want to get, you must first be willing to give it. I wonder sometimes why Jesus teaches this. I mean, what does he hope to achieve? I mean, what's the end result? What's his vision? How would the world be different if people really followed this teaching? How would my life be different? What would I gain? What would it cost? I mean, if everyone was always forgiving and lending and giving without expecting in return, the world as we know it, would it become just chaos? Or would love prevail? But that is the gospel, right? That we can follow this teaching. That love does prevail. Anyway, bringing it down to the ground, last week I spent a few days at a monastery. And like every monastery I've ever been to, there's a little gift shop. And in the gift shop were these little cards, the size of a business card, with a word on one side and a saying by one of the brothers on the other side. So I picked one up that says humility. And on the back, Brother Brown, it's a humble name, right? Brother Brown says, a daily dose of our own failure, taken with a glass of patience and understanding, can take us to that place where we can at least begin to love our enemy. Isn't that nice? A daily dose of our own failure. So every day, taking that inventory, look at yourself, say, how have I failed? And if we can't think of any failures for the day, you can start with, I have not loved you with my whole heart, or my neighbor as myself. Got me. Daily dose of our own failure, but taken with a glass of patience and understanding. It can bring us to that place where we might just begin to love our enemies. In other words, we look at ourselves, but don't judge even yourself. Look at yourself with understanding. Try to understand. Sometimes it helps to detach and look at ourselves from a real distance and be able to say, wherever I am, there I go again. We may even realize that whatever happens to us, how we respond is always and entirely up to us. Amen.